The following program contains explicit American history. If you suffer from stupidity, Randall may not be right for you. Check with your revisionist historian.
Standing for truth in the four corners of America. Fighting for justice on the frontiers of the culture wars. And turning resistance into an art form. The only TV host arrested more times than Mahatma Gandhi, Randall Terry.
Hello, friend. Welcome to a special edition of Randall Terry, the voice of resistance. What makes it special? Our studio is not done. We're still filming from this crazy green screen. But the content of this program is far superior than most things that you're going to hear on any of the major networks, and certainly online. We'll talk today a little bit about Casey Anthony, Michelle Bachmann, Herman Cain, and another installment of our great interview with Stephen Deace. Today's program brought to you in part by corrupt campaign managers, helping deceive Americans and destroy America, one election at a time. And by Michelle Bachmann for president, burning her bridges before she crosses them. Don't go away. I've got a quick word from Joey the Hammer, and then content.
Do you like backgammon, chess, checkers, other board games? Or perhaps you're interested in leatherworking or pottery classes. Maybe you just like basketball or something even a little more leisurely like lawn bowling. We call it bocce ball where I come from. Well, no matter what your pastime of choice might be, we've got it all right here. Club fed. If you need a roof over your head and 3 hot meals a day, where you don't have to worry about inflation for food or for the cost of electricity, this is your place to be.
Hey, I want you to know, coming up in the next segment, we went to a mud race, and we compared presidential candidates with the mud racers. Next segment, some really cool footage. You're not going to want to miss it. All right, let's talk about Michelle Bachmann. I personally like Michelle Bachmann, but in my opinion, she's getting out of the blocks really poorly. 2 major mistakes, in my opinion, that would show what I'm talking about. Number 1, she hired Ed Rollins. Ed Rollins, as a campaign manager, is part of what is wrong with this country. Ed Rollins is somebody who is determined to knock off the edges of somebody, what he perceives to be edges, that would keep them from being centrist. So this leads me, of course, to Michelle Bachmann's second mistake, and that is that when asked simple questions about homosexuality on Face the Nation with Bob Schieffer, she dodged. She didn't have the courage to answer the questions. She was asked, is homosexuality a choice? And what did she say? I'm running to be president. I'm not here to be anyone's judge. Wait, Michelle, this was a simple question. Do people choose to engage in certain behavior? Because the temptation towards a sin, maybe I'm tempted to steal something, that does not make me a thief. It's just what I'm tempted with. It's the behavior that is the issue. So the defining behavior of the homosexual movement is people of the same gender engaging in various acts with each other. Do they have a choice when they commit those acts? The answer is yes. Does someone have a choice about the feelings they have? What tempts them? Well, that's a whole nother discussion. And I think that there are things that happen to us as children that might make us predisposed towards certain temptations, certain feelings, certain things that vex us and sins that we circle back around to again and again. But that wasn't the question. And to make matters even worse, when Bob Schieffer asked her if supporting traditional marriage or homosexual marriage would be a litmus test for her, for federal judges that she appoints, she didn't answer the question. Well, the simple answer is, and she said something vague like, well, my litmus test is the Constitution. Well, what does that mean? Does anyone hear candidates from the left say, I refuse to have the Constitution as a litmus test? Everyone says that the Constitution is their litmus test. People who support baby killing and homosexual marriage and the funding of Planned Parenthood and the socialist plantation, they all say that they're supporting the Constitution. So she should have simply said, if a man or a woman who aspires to be a federal judge does not know the marriage is between a man and a woman, then that person has shown that they are not qualified to sit on the federal bench. That's all she had to say. And to complicate matters even more, Ed Rollins is bad-mouthing Sarah Palin. Now, I don't care what you think about Sarah Palin. This is about politics. Sarah Palin's base and Michelle Bachmann's base are primarily the same base. And if Governor Palin does not get into the race, Michelle Bachmann needs those voters. And for Ed Rollins to go about bad-mouthing Sarah Palin is not going to help Michelle Bachmann get that base, because he's offending the supporters of Sarah Palin. My fear for Michelle Bachmann is simply this, that she is and will continue to be, I hope, a great congresswoman, but she's a poor presidential candidate because she doesn't know how to play to her base. If she'd have come out swinging with that homosexual question or those two homosexual questions on Face the Nation, she could have energized the right, the defense of marriage people. But instead, she waffled. Now compare that to Herman Cain, the black businessman, former CEO of Godfather's Pizza. If you've seen him, you see that he answers the questions concisely and without equivocation. He actually said that one of his opponents who supported abortion in the case of rape and incest is pro-choice. Now, guess what? He's right. Really, I mean, if you're going to kill a baby because of the crime of the father, well, this baby was conceived by a rapist, or this baby was conceived in incest. Therefore, this baby must die. Well, that's not a pro-life position. And when people say that they're pro-life except for the case of rape and incest, they're equivocating for political reasons. Do you think that somebody like that is really going to fight to restore the protection of law to babies? I don't think so. Herman Cain, he says it like it is, and boy, that is refreshing. And finally, speaking about babies, I think that a lot of us are absolutely dumbfounded that Casey Anthony was acquitted of the murder of her 18-month-old daughter. Now, I did not watch most of the trial, and frankly, these sensational TV trials disgust me. We have a lot of crises going on in the world, and there are murder trials happening every day in America. So this was televised because of the heinous nature of it. But the truth of the matter is, and I've wavered back and forth as to whether or not I should make some tongue-in-cheek comments or whether I should just be bold, go for the throat. The truth of the matter is this: America is killing her children by the millions. All right? We are killing babies by the millions and millions and millions. And there is a callous disregard for babies that is exemplified at so many levels in our culture, in our laws, in what we do with children at ages 3 and 5 and 7 and 9, that as horrific as this crime was against this little girl, if in fact she was murdered, as horrific as that crime was, crimes of that nature are being committed against children in the womb and out of the womb every single day in this nation. As the phrase goes, devil take the youngest. That's what's happening in America. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to shift gears, and boy, they're going to be some loud gears. We're going to look at presidential politics, mudslinging style. Oh!
There's room on the granite at Mount Rushmore for one more face. They're saving it for Randall Terry. Something about having to be dead first.
Moments with Moses. I will devastate the land, so that your enemies who settle in it shall be astonished at it.
Welcome back to the program, friend. If you just joined me, I want to again apologize for broadcasting from a green screen. We're in the middle of building our brand new studio, and it's taking more time and more money than engineers originally predicted. The truth of the matter is we hired government engineers, and they're always known to underbid and undertime their jobs. Oh, I feel great being a part of the government. Well, we filmed over the 4th of July weekend in the hills of West Virginia, went to a mud boggin race. Man, what a blast. And as we found out, each of these drivers and people around even, well, it was all about presidential politics. Hope you enjoy this. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for presidential 4x4 mud racing. Let's take a look at the Republican field of candidates. Mitt Romney. I think that man's going in the wrong direction. Rick Santorum. Herman Cain. How's that for a campaign? Tim Pawlenty. Not getting much traction. Michelle Bachmann.
I hate when that happens.
Newt Gingrich. Rudy Giuliani? And yours truly, the Democrat, the other Democrat, Randall Terry. Thank you, Andrew, for another great job filming and editing. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, my interview with Steve Deace about his new upcoming book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, where he looks at how and why the religious right has failed to obtain any major policy changes in over 30 years as a voting bloc. You're not going to want to miss this interview. I'll be right back. What are you guys here lobbying for?
Trying to get some veterans' problems straightened out.
Good for you. Thank you for your service to the country.
Thank you.
God bless you. Long life to you. Bolshevism is not a policy, it is a disease. Sir Winston Churchill. Welcome back to the program, friend. Did you know that the religious right in America may well be the largest voting bloc that exists? We're talking about evangelicals, Roman Catholics, people who believe in God, believe in the scriptures, attend church regularly, and they are clearly responsible for propelling Ronald Reagan into the White House, Bush the elder, Bush the younger, and when they stay home, we get Bill Clinton, we get Barack Obama. Well, there's a book coming out, We Won't Get Fooled Again, which looks at why the religious right, even though it gets people elected to the White House and to federal office, that it doesn't have policy victories. That's the issue. Having the government change so that the laws are changed. I'm going to interview Steve Deace. He's going to tell us some of his insights. Welcome back, friend, for our third and final installment of an interview with Steve Deace, who is a broadcaster like myself and spent many years on WHO, soon to have, hopefully, his own TV and or radio show and blog site, all kind of stuff.
Yep.
What's your website?
SteveDeace.com, really easy.
Right. The only problem is no one knows how to spell his last name. Let's try that. Put it on the screen. Go ahead.
DEACE, SteveDeace.com.
All right, please go and check out his website. A lot of great stuff.
I'll make it simple. Google worst person living in Iowa. My name is sure to be one of the first few entries.
Nice. I love that. Remember, people, you know a man by the bars on his shoulder and the scars on his back. If you don't have the right enemies, you're not doing something right.
Amen to that.
It's the sins of omission that are crushing the church. It's what we're not doing.
Yes, I agree. I think that, and you know, one of the things I think I've noticed is you go back to the book of James that talks about faith without works. One of the things I think that the religious right did in the last generation, and I'm good at Monday morning quarterback, but that's based off interviews I did with its own leaders for the last.
Coming out in his book very soon called We Won't Get Fooled Again. And as soon as it's out, hopefully with an appendix from me, no matter what, I'm going to promote the book and give you a chance to see it and to read it for yourself.
One of the things we noticed is that this movement did works with faith as opposed to faith with works. Meaning, there were a lot of meetings. A lot of people that got together, they strategized, they sent out direct fundraising, and they said, this is what we think we ought to do, and we're going to do, and who we're going to do it with. And then they prayed and said, God, bless this. They did a Cain-like offering, okay? They said, hey, this is the offering I want to give God. Whether he wants it or not, here's what I'm willing to give him. As opposed to an offering based on faith, as opposed to prayer.
What did God tell us to do? Let's obey him.
Yes, so as opposed to what is the will of God? What are we supposed to do? Let me just give one example of what I mean. For 38 years, we have accepted the flawed premise that Roe versus Wade is the law of the land, even though it is not a law made by the only constitutionally enumerated body in our country that is allowed to make the law, the courts. But we have treated it as such, and we've spent 38 years. Most of the federal judiciaries are appointed by Republicans. 7 of the 9 Supreme Court justices that have made all the Supreme Court decisions we hate were Republican appointees. We wasted all our time on this, convinced that this was what we were going to do, and if we just keep doing it, if we just keep chasing this cheese in the maze, sooner or later God will let us have it. As opposed to, let's take all the money that we've given to all these Christian legal defense organizations and all the revenue that they have generated, and let's say that we were going to build counseling services for teenage girls in terms of if they're pregnant, to keep their children. We were going to find adoption homes for all these children. And if we had implemented a strategy to actually attack evil right at the kitchen table where it's the most effective in our system, as opposed to taking the premise of the left that the court made the law and we should validate that for 38 years, now that's how you end. That's how you end a moral and spiritual plague. Because what we failed to realize, Randall, since we did not do this based on faith, but based on sight, since we didn't do this based on faith, no one bothered to ask themselves this simple question. You know, we live in the freest, most prosperous...
What's the question?
This is it. We live in the freest, most enlightened and prosperous nation God has ever allowed in his creation. Yet we are murdering our own children. There is not a political or philosophical or legal solution for that. That is a spiritual darkness. That is a spiritual malaise. And only a spiritual solution will solve it. There isn't a legal precedent for this.
You're wrong, and I'm going to help you because this is critical. Slavery is a crime.
Sure.
And it's a sin.
Yeah.
So there is a spiritual dynamic and there is a legal dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of law is justice.
Agreed.
And there are certain parts of the commandments of God that have a civil, criminal application,
Sure.
and certain parts that don't.
Yep.
Nobody goes to jail for covetousness.
Sure.
It's a sin, but it has no crime. There are crimes like murder that are a sin, thou shalt not murder, but also a crime for which you must be punished.
Mm-hmm.
Now, go to slavery. There was a Monday in U.S. history where you could own a slave. And then there was a following Monday when you could not.
Right.
No hearts were changed in that week.
Yes.
The law changed.
Yes.
So there is a solution to child killing, namely that you must restore the full protection of law. And I know that you know that.
Yes.
But I don't want the people to come away thinking, oh, Steve doesn't think we need to restore the full protection of law to unborn babies.
No, in fact, but I think the stance that you're taking is a faith-based stance. You're beginning with the premise. This is the Augustinian premise, or the premise of an Aquinas or a Martin Luther King Jr. There is no law other than the law of God.
correct.
Any man-made code that seeks to contradict that is no law. All right, but that is a faith-based premise. Okay, that's not a materialistically based premise. Instead, what a bunch of Christian lawyers have said is, that is the law. And we've got to incrementally regulate it out of business.
They're positivists and they don't know it.
And yes, that's exactly right. And that is because they are, and they're so convinced that since their intentions are good, that I am good. And so this is a work of, this is works with faith. This is, God, I'm working with the right intentions. Why won't you bless it? As opposed to, God says, I am a jealous God. I will not share my glory with another.
Yes.
I'm not going to share my glory with the Republican Party. I'm not going to share it with a church denomination. I'm not going to share it with a leader, a movement, or a country, or a flag.
Well, just
All right?
picture God in heaven saying, hey.
All right, I know I jumped out of that interview right in the middle of it. You're going to have to tune in tomorrow to hear more about the book coming out soon. We won't get fooled again. I'll be right back with a word from one of our founders. Don't go away.
Both we and our fathers have sinned. We have committed iniquity. We have done wickedly.
Noah Webster said, "The religion which has introduced civil liberty is the religion of Christ and his apostles, which enjoins humility, piety, and benevolence, which acknowledges in every person a brother or a sister and a citizen with equal rights. This is genuine Christianity, and to this we owe our free constitutions of government." Friends, one of the reasons that I constantly quote a founding father at the end of this program is to show you two things. Number one, that America and our civil liberties simply do not exist without Christianity. Those who would say, whether they're from the ACLU or the far left of the political spectrum, those who would say that Christianity and religious principles are a threat to our freedoms, and that the founders fought to keep a separation of religion and politics, they're simply lying. And the other reason I quote them is to show you what true political courage looks like.